is a matter about the structure of our societies. And therefore, it actually should get very high-level discussion. And I think this summit is putting, and this platform is putting Latin America on the track to recognize the importance of taxation. So I can't tell you how important this is, not only for the region, but for the world. 3 decades ago, when I chaired Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors, I argued that the system of taxation based on transfer pricing, which is the system we have still today, was so badly flawed that another one was needed. The other one that I argued for then was the formulaic approach that the independent commission that I now chair and was previously chaired by Jose Antonio advocated. The transfer price system didn't and couldn't work in the New World. In a way, what motivated my understanding of this is within the United States, we did not use transfer pricing for taxation of corporation in different states. It would have been impossible. It would have opened it up so many avenues for tax avoidance, the complexity. No one ever proposed that. And yet, as we moved into a globalized world, we accepted a system that was created 70 years earlier. Now it's 100 years earlier. It was broken then, and it's more broken now. And it's more broken now, not just because globalization has proceeded in the way that integration in the United States had already been there, but the structure of the economy has changed. It might have worked in the context of making, in manufacturing. But even then, transfer pricing, how are you going to have an arm's length pricing of a shirt with no sleeves, no pockets? I mean, there just isn't an arm's length price. And you make up numbers, and making up numbers means you are opening up an avenue for tax avoidance. But as you move into a world with intellectual property and services, the system that was never working for manufacturing becomes totally dysfunctional and an open avenue for tax avoidance. And so I have to admit that one of my many failures in life was that I did not persuade the U.S. Treasury. In spite of, I thought, my brilliant arguments, they continue to reflect the interest of corporate interests who are interested in tax avoidance. So it was part of my induction into understanding power politics and how good arguments don't always prevail over money. And so 30 years later, we are still debating the same issue. It was precisely because it wasn't working, because it provided enormous opportunities for tax avoidance. That was why so many businesses and finance leaders loved it. U.S. Treasury, reflecting those interests, was unmoved, even as the system was openly broken. Reform is needed because the current system is inequitable, inefficient, and because it provides such opportunities for tax avoidance and evasion, and is not generating the revenues required for 21st century economies. Failure to have a just and equitable tax system within and amongst countries has further ramification. For instance, it creates an unlevel playing field within countries. Small companies, SMEs, can't take advantage of these big tax advantages. So small companies actually pay taxes, and the big companies don't. And that's an economic distortion, but it's an economic distortion which creates more inequality, within countries and between countries, and means revenue generated to the source countries of the big companies. So as an economist, you see this as an enormous distortion in our productive system. Moreover, within a country, it undermines social cohesion and democracy. Across countries, it undermines the broader ability to cooperate, so necessary in a host of areas, including pandemics and climate. At both levels, it feeds populism, the rising tide of which is a fundamental threat to our entire civilization as we know it. So when we're talking about tax reform in this area, we should understand we're also talking about politics and where our societies are going and the threat, I think, of populism to our democracy.